Hello and welcome to this AeroTime interview, which is part of our special week dedicated to women in aviation. My name is Victoria Bryan and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to work on AeroTime's special week of activity, highlighting the significance of the role played by women in aviation. As a journalist and trainee pilot myself, I'm delighted to work with AeroTime in bringing you special reports and interviews from across the world, celebrating the role that women have played in aviation throughout the years and continue to play today. And we'll be looking into the future with some of the most senior women in aviation, including Kate Staples, General Counsel of the UK Civil Aviation Authority, who I am delighted to introduce to you now. A solicitor by training, Kate has been advising senior teams working in aviation across government and regulators since 2003. She joined the UK CAA in 2010 and is currently the regulator's General Counsel, where she serves as the official secretary to the board and sits on the executive committee. It is here that Kate led the legal team behind the UK's biggest peacetime repatriation effort, helping to bring home some 140,000 people following the collapse of Thomas Cook in 2019. Kate was recognised as the Lawyer magazine's General Counsel of the Year for 2020. Hello, Kate, and thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
Let's start by going right back to the beginning of your aviation career, if you don't mind. How was it that you came to join the industry in the first place?
Entirely by accident. I had started my legal career in private practice in the city in a completely different discipline, construction and engineering. But I had applied to the government legal service and expressed a desire to join the Department for Transport. And on day one, when I turned up in the Department for Transport, my then legal director said to me, well, I have two roles available, one in railways, one in aviation. And I said to him, well, tell me more about the railways role. And he said, it's all to do with the failure of Railtrack. And I said, let me stop you there. I'll take the aviation role. So it really was almost accidental. But from that moment on, it's been the key focus of my professional career. So in the last 18 years or so, 17 years have been in aviation for government and regulator. So I've spent quite a lot of time in and around aviation.
If I could ask, how did you find it when you joined the industry? And it's quite a specialised industry, of course. And how long did it take you to sort of get to grips with learning all the aviation ins and outs? And how did you do that?
Gosh, I wouldn't say that I've yet got to grips with it. One of the great joys of aviation is that it is an international industry, but it's also a regional and a local industry. So from a professional legal background, there's domestic law, there's European law, there's international law to contend with and grapple with, which is fascinating. Then there are different types of law: criminal, commercial, consumer protection. There is no end of variety in the aviation legal domain. So I'm still learning, and one of my challenges is to really keep a sharp focus on simplifying and looking at the nub of what's important in all of the legislative framework, and actually to try and, where possible, make the framework simpler for all to use, include not just lawyers, but also pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, because the simpler the framework is, the more likely it is to be followed by all who operate within the sector. So it's still a learning process. I don't think I'll ever know all that there is to know.
One of the other big challenges of the aviation sector, and pertaining to the reason for this interview, of course, is that it's a very male-dominated industry. You've obviously progressed very impressively in your career. You've been very successful. But were there ever times when you thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to get ahead here? And am I going to be hindered in my career progression as a woman?
Honestly, I don't think I have ever felt like that. One of the great joys of working first in government and then moving to the CAA was that the approach in government and in the civil service at the time was very collegiate, and what mattered was aptitude, interest, curiosity, energy, and what didn't matter or didn't seem to matter to me was my gender or my or to an extent, my background. And I was able to work alongside colleagues, both on the policy side and the legal side, who were expert, vastly experienced in a range of subjects, not just transport law, but other forms of law and other organisations. And there was a very much a collegiate approach to getting the job done and focusing on achieving things in the public interest. So that focus on something that bigger than oneself, I think, was helpful in setting the tone for my career and enabling me to focus on doing a good job at any given moment. And because I was doing a good job, I was able to demonstrate value and achieve things that were of value to the team, to the department, to the UK generally. So it sort of, there was an alignment, but I think it was enabled by the climate and the culture that certainly was evident in the civil service at the time.
Okay, that's really good to hear. One of the things I've learned about you is that you've been praised for being the kind of leader who leads by example. And it sounds very much like you had a very sort of fostering environment throughout your career. What kind of, maybe just expanding on that a bit more, so what kind of leaders did you first encounter when you joined the aviation industry, and were there both male and female role models available to you that encouraged you?
Yes, I mean, when I walked into the DFT on day one and made the choice for aviation, and I was given a pile of files about a foot high, and I was asked to draft some secondary security legislation, which I'd never done before. But immediately I was able to speak to seasoned colleagues who were both male colleagues and female colleagues to ask for help, as well as giving it a good go myself. And again, what marked the leaders and the people from whom I've learned most out was their helpfulness, their focus on what needed to be achieved rather than their particular role in life or their role in the hierarchy, the importance of going about things in the right way and making sure that contributions were solicited from all the relevant people at the right time, and that they were solicited in a way that was encouraging and that enabled everyone, regardless of seniority or relatively junior status in the hierarchy, to share what they thought in order to develop a better outcome. So it was very much an inclusive approach, and it was an inclusive approach that wasn't aviation first. It wasn't overly technical. I mean, aviation law can be quite abstruse, and I gather you're learning a bit of aviation law in your pilot training, so you'll probably know how technical it can be. But the focus was very much on enabling rather than overcomplicating, and being clear in any given circumstance, what are we trying to achieve, who needs to play a role in achieving that, and then getting everybody involved, either in the room, in a meeting, or in correspondence over email. And so leadership wasn't hierarchical, it was evident in contributions of value to getting the job done.
And have you seen, since over the course of your career, have you seen perhaps more women coming through the ranks? Have you seen women sort of, coming through the ranks, being successful? And then also, have you come across any examples where women have in fact left the industry because they didn't feel that they had the right kind of support?
If I look around the CAA now, and I've been at the CAA just over 10 years, it is very much a more diverse organisation than the one I joined in 2010. There are many more women at all levels. Still, we need to do a little bit more at the senior levels, but I think the more we focus our efforts on that, the more successful we will be in that area. And and that variety, that diversity is energising, because with diversity of experience and background comes diversity of insight and thought. And if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So it's been a great source of energy, both personally to see lots of newer, younger women joining the CAA, but also in terms of their outlook and the expertise and the insights they can bring, which haven't been brought into the CAA before. So it's hugely energizing. To your second question about have we lost some along the way? Honestly, yes, we have. And it's a disappointment, because it's always a disappointment to lose talented colleagues who still have more to give. And there are bound to be many reasons why some have left and gone into different paths and different sectors altogether. The comfort I draw from that is at least we had them for a while, and whilst they were with us, they were part and parcel of that energy, that momentum, that drive that has moved us from where we were, say, in 2010 to where we are now in 2021. So yes, it would be lovely if some of them were still in the CAA. They're not. They're bound to be thriving wherever they are now. But whilst they were with us, we really gained from having them.
Okay, and you spoke there that more needs to be done, especially at the senior levels. What sort of steps are you taking at the moment within your team, and maybe more broadly, what steps do you see within the CAA to encourage the diversity and inclusion? And maybe just going back to what you said about the ones who left, are there any lessons that you've learned from those that left that you have sort of put into place for future women joining the CAA and joining your team?
Thinking about what I've done both before the CAA and at the CAA, I have always tried, I won't necessarily say I've always succeeded, but I've always tried to create circumstances where colleagues feel able to work in a way that is sensible and suits their particular set of circumstances. I can think back to an example in DFT where a female colleague with caring responsibilities was very apologetic about the fact that her working week was non-standard, and we had a conversation about it. And I said, never apologise for having the life that you have and having the responsibilities you have and wanting to perform well in both the personal and the professional domain. And that's an approach I've carried through, and it's sort of informed my approach to those who want to work flexibly, whether they have caring responsibilities or not. It underpinned the approach that I and we took in my team to flexible working, which meant that by the time COVID hit in March 2020, I actually don't think any of our team was working a standard 5-day week in an office. We had got to a place where we were much more flexible and were working in ways that met the needs of the business at the time, and were also helping colleagues live full lives outside the office. So it's about thinking about what's needed to get things done for the CAA and what flexibilities can be built in, and recognising that there's got to be give and take. Sometimes it will not be possible to give everybody the flexibility they want because the business needs are so great. If you think of the Thomas Cook scenario, essentially lives were put on hold in some cases for weeks, months on end, but it was necessary to make sure that consumers and those who we were bringing back from overseas were looked after properly. When that sort of crisis isn't present, we have much more play, and it's something that we're looking at again at the moment within the team, simply because we can look forward and see the roadmap to lockdown being eased in the UK at least over the coming weeks and months. And what we need to do now is think about what are the needs of the business in 2021 and going forward. What have we learnt by the enforced absence in the last 12 months? And how do we, again, strike the current and most effective balance, excuse me, between business, personal needs?
And if we take it right back now, back to school days, and not your school days, I hasten to add, but there's a lot of talk at the moment about we need to get women interested in STEM subjects when they're much younger, and that's obviously at school. How important is it, do you think, that this debate is ongoing and that girls are encouraged more into the STEM subjects in terms of getting them into traditionally male-dominated industries like aviation?
It's very important, and I should preface my comments on this subject by saying I am unusual in my family in that my father had a doctorate in chemistry, my mother was a physicist, and I sort of left the sciences as soon as I possibly could. So I think I disappointed them in some respects. But I think the key thing is to encourage all children, but specifically those where there is evidence of prejudice, if that's the right word, or a blind spot, to try and remove blinkers and blind spots and really consciously take steps to open the opportunities as broadly as possible, as young as possible, so that we don't lose girls by the time they're in their teens because they already think that girls don't do that, boys do. So I think it requires constant effort and concerted effort within the education system and more broadly in the sort of surrounding industrial sectors to make sure that the value of all sorts of different subjects is available to everyone and that blinkers are removed. I suppose the one thing that I would add is, in focusing on STEM subjects, what I would want us also to focus on is enabling and encouraging young people, students, but also those who are now in the workforce, to continue learning and not to think you stop learning at 16, 18, 21, but continuously to learn throughout your working life, and to enable learning by also letting go of things that you may have learnt in the past but which are no longer valid, or views and assumptions which have proved to be unfounded. So I think that continuous learning is vital, and continuous ability to think around a subject, as well as just having science and technology as a core focus. There are some broader issues that we might miss if we lose lifelong learning as a goal as well.
Yeah, I think it's crucial as well, and I think this is what the STEM subjects and aviation can give, is that it's constantly changing and there's always something new to learn. And I think that's what makes a career in this field so rewarding, is that you do always have something to learn. So I think that's a really crucial aspect of this industry as well, that everyone should be encouraged to look at, not just women.
Just a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to participate with some colleagues at the CAA on a human factors systems thinking course, and it's not in my domain. Obviously, I'm a lawyer and I'm meant to focus on lawyering, but I wanted to spend some time with colleagues who are learning about a, quote, technical discipline, because it's so pervasive. Systems thinking and human factors, it underpins and it runs through every single technical domain in aviation. And it was fascinating. And I came away from that 3-day course, inspired by the sheer energy and commitment of colleagues, both male and female, that I was working alongside, but really fired up and interested in the technical subject matter. So my husband was slightly surprised that I wanted to spend some of my time on holiday learning, as well as all the other things that I was doing. But it was fascinating, and it's just that never stop, always keep thinking, why, what if, could we do this slightly differently? And I think that curiosity, allied to a broad foundation of educational experience is critical.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so what do you want to see coming out of weeks like this that celebrate women in aviation? What's sort of like the ultimate aim that we can achieve by doing all these special events?
I mean, it may sound odd, but ultimately it would be lovely not to have them, because we no longer need them. And we've arrived at a situation where the workforce in the aviation sector fully reflects the society that it is drawn from and that it serves. So in an ideal world, we wouldn't need a Women in Aviation Week or even an International Women's Day. I think we're some way off that. And I think the real value of events and sort of having a focus of this sort is that it enables visibility. And it's often said that you can't be what you cannot see. If you cannot see women thriving in the aviation sector, you can assume, or you can play to the prejudice that women don't belong there, and that's not true. It's not true at all. So I think it's visibility first and foremost, in order to consistently impart the message that we all have a place in the aviation sector, regardless of gender, ethnicity, religious background, nationality. It's a very inclusive and connecting industry by its nature, and it's making sure that we can see it and therefore we can be it.
I'm going to come back to some of the points you just raised there, but I just wanted to bring in the fact that you were named as the Lawyer Magazine's General Counsel of the Year for 2020. So very big accolade, and it's very richly deserved according to the friends and the colleagues who've worked with you. What qualities do you have that led you to this award?
Ooh, yes, that's a tricky question to answer, and I have to confess it was a great surprise. I would put it down to being me and not pretending, and that might sound hubristic. It's actually meant to be anything but hubristic. It's very tiring pretending to be what you're not. And I can still recall when I first joined the CAA, people would say to me, "Oh, you're the new X being my predecessor," and I said, "No, I'm just the old me." And I haven't, I think, done anything that is not innate or inherent. So I've tried to be me. As I've mentioned, I've tried to focus on getting things done, working with colleagues, because colleagues coming together and collaborating is the way that most things get solved these days, because there is very rarely any question to which only one person has the answer. So it's bringing people together, it's enabling people to create the circumstances in which they will thrive and they themselves can contribute and bring on others. It's having a sense of humour, it's not taking myself too seriously, and it's caring. It may sound a little odd, but it's actually caring about the benefits that we can bring in the work we do at the CAA. It's caring about the people who are delivering those benefits, and it's caring about making a difference. It sounds very trite, but it is. Those sorts of things keep me going. So it's a combination of things, but as I say, it came as a huge surprise.
No, I can see why after speaking to you today. So, just going back to that topic of visibility there. Now, AeroTime is doing a behind-the-scenes report about the first ever all-female crewed flight took place in Afghanistan a couple of weeks ago, which included the very first Afghan-born female first officer. So when you see stories like this, what are your thoughts about that?
What it what it hammers home is just the importance of recognizing the unique perspective and unique set of experiences that everybody has, and trying to make the most of those experiences in an expansive way. Some years ago, I'm going to tell you a story. You might think I'm a little bit mad when I say this. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. My sister gave me several pairs of socks for Christmas. You might say that she lacked imagination in her present buying choices, but the socks were in the colours of the suffragettes, because it was, in the run-up to the 100th anniversary on which some women got the vote in the UK. And it was an eye-opening moment for me, because I thought to myself, here am I in this big job, General Counsel and Secretary to the CAA, but have I actually done enough to make the most of my experience in potentially helping others? And I concluded that I hadn't, and I was being, unhelpful and potentially a little bit too selfish. So those socks prompted me to reach out to colleagues and deliberately to try and share my experience in a way that I hope others would benefit from. And I think those networks of experience and connection and support are enabled by learning about examples like the Afghan all-female flight crew and cabin crew, because you think, wow, for them to have achieved that against the background of both the approach to female emancipation in that country, but also the terrible struggles that country has had with civil wars and invasions over many decades. It's awe-inspiring, and by being awe-inspiring, it's maybe forming mental connections in the minds of others. Well, again, if they can, against that background, why can't I? And hopefully the answer to the question why can't I is, well, actually there's no reason why you can't, so get on and do it. So it's forming that sort of visible network of women who can and do, but it's also switching minds onto the fact that I can too, and that I can too is a really powerful enabler and source of energy.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. It's a really valid point. And now for a final question here. If there is one thing that you could change in the aviation industry so that when you look back in 10, 20 years' time and say, yes, that was a change for the better, what would you like that change to be?
I would suggest that the most beneficial change would be to unlock the power of collaboration born of curiosity. You might say, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is aviation has within it a large number of very technical disciplines, and they've grown up over decades and have delivered aviation safety levels which are, until relatively recently, highest ever achieved. I think the next wave of performance is going to require collaboration between specialist domains in a way that possibly hasn't been necessary in the past, and knitting it together in a way that is relatively new, because we have new technologies, we have new entrants into the aviation sector who are not traditional aviators by background, so they bring with them different understandings, different experiences, different perspectives, and they pose a huge opportunity for the sector to think about what we do, how we do it, and how we set about maintaining and improving safety against a background of many decades worth of experience and expertise. So I think It's collaboration and curiosity in pursuit of incremental and potentially disruptive gains over the coming years.
Okay, great. Now at this point, Kate, I'd like to invite AeroTime Chief Executive Richard Stevenson to come and say a few words. Over to you, Richard.
Victoria, thank you. And Kate, thank you for being here today and for sharing your thoughts with us. I know that I speak for everyone at AeroTime, the CAA and the wider industry in wanting to acknowledge your significant contribution to the aviation sector. And with that in mind, it is my very great pleasure to virtually present you with one of the very first AeroTime Aviation Achievement Awards. This award is made by the Global Executive Committee of AeroTime, and I would like to read the citation. Presented to Kate Staples in recognition of her lengthy and dedicated service to the aviation industry, during which she has consistently demonstrated the best qualities, leading by example, promoting and encouraging equal opportunities for everyone, commitment and dedication to duty. The AeroTime Global Executive Committee recognises the positive influence of these efforts and the significance of the impact on the aviation industry and its people, both today and into the future. Kate, congratulations for being one of the very first recipients of this award, and I'm delighted to tell you that a number of the first recipients of this award are all women and are being announced this week. I'm just so sorry that we cannot meet to hand over this certificate and the trophy in person, but it will be winging its way to you in the very near future, and we hope that it will serve as a constant reminder of the gratitude of so many people for your efforts over many, many years. Thank you.
I'm speechless. I am utterly speechless.
Well, but you shouldn't be speechless.
You've silenced me, Mr. Stevenson. Thank you. I am speechless.
Kate, thank you for joining AeroTime today to talk about your work and for sharing your thoughts on how we can further develop inclusiveness in aviation. I know that we all want to see the aviation sector make further strides to become even more diverse and inclusive in the future. And let me also say congratulations on your AeroTime Achievement Award, which is very much deserved.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of this AeroTime interview. I would like to remind you all that we'll be publishing a range of articles and interviews to mark this special week, recognising and celebrating the contribution and success of women in our sector. I hope you all enjoy watching and reading the various articles and reports in the days ahead. My name is Victoria Bryan, and you've been watching AeroTime. Goodbye.